I think we've got one more session before lunch, but this is probably going to be one of the most fun sessions that we're going to have. So please, everyone, I want the warmest welcome of the day for Raj, co-founder and president at Solana. Thanks for making it.
Hey, everyone. Yeah. It's a much bigger crowd than last time.
Market conditions kind of give it away.
It's much easier to be on stage when things are going well.
Speaking of that, to jump right into it, obviously Solana has been quite an emotional roller coaster that we have all been on to some varying extents, but you more than anyone else. I can empathize a bit with the emotional journey, but would love to hear more from your perspective. What was that like? Going through the highs, the lows, and now we're back.
Yeah. I mean, emotional roller coaster is definitely a word to describe the last few years for all of us. I think the word trauma bonding also comes up a lot. I actually think that's a really important component of any decentralized system where many stakeholders who are not formally affiliated with one another have to find some common purpose and drive toward it. You need to be challenged and you need to consolidate the core of that community. So I think that has been a real pleasure to see. And also I think Tushar better than most people that we had many near-death experiences before the super public ones. So, I think at a certain point, I just got kind of emotionally fried. So by the time late 2022 rolled around, it was just like, oh, another one of these. I wonder how this one's gonna resolve, because it always resolves. We'll talk more about it, but I really think the reason that it always resolves is because of the focus we've had on such a highly differentiated product in the market that that's really valuable, and I think it's a really special thing to be part of to have that thing touch so many lives.
Yeah, I do think nothing brings people together like shared hardship. So trauma bonding, I think, is a really powerful word, and I think it's really powerful, especially for the developer community around Solana. I remember, in 22, towards the end of 22 through 23, there was a whole meme of there's 75 developers on Solana, everyone's leaving, kind of thing. Obviously, that wasn't true.
Right. Well, that's the other thing. I think, there was I've often gone back to this interview that Jeff Bezos had after the .com crash, and after Amazon kind of rose from the ashes and ended up doing really well, and they asked sort of how did you get through that? Wasn't it overwhelming? Why didn't you quit? And he, I'm paraphrasing a little bit. He basically said, look, our focus was customers. We had an obsession with customers, and the metrics that we were looking at were customer-oriented metrics. And through all of the volatility in the markets, what we saw was the metrics that we cared about kept going up, and they bounced back quickly. And I think that's the same thing we saw internally. There were always a lot more than 75 devs showing up, pushing code. We were watching commits coming in on open source repos. We were, looking at these active developer charts. We were looking at things like NFT traders. And I think before anyone else really found their sanity, we breathed a sigh of relief because we knew that as long as some core of these developers and users found value in the network and continued showing up, those behaviors would scale. It would just be a matter of time. So, but that being said, there were some dark moments in there.
Yeah, what do you think it was that kept those developers together and kept everyone sticking to the ecosystem when the pressure to pivot was really high? People were thinking about what should I be doing next, but clearly there was something that kept everyone together.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of different motivations, but the one that I keep coming back to is, I think, the same reason that, when I met Anatoly and he had this white paper and he quit his job at Dropbox, I just told myself, I can't not give this guy 6 months of my life, because I would regret it forever if this vision that he has just falls flat because of one of the dumb mistakes that people make in the first 6 months. Anatoly and this vision of a global a single state machine that that's composable, that's synchronizes as fast as the speed of light allows is it may be eventually looked at as like the kind of the ultimate form of network that that prior networks gave birth to. It all sort of led up to this one, this value layer for all humans and all assets. And just the idea that that might exist someday is extremely exciting. And I think, especially in 2022, there was really no other alternative. The idea of other high throughput blockchains and parallelization being an architectural kind of design that spreads through the rest of crypto were not obvious things, and there were no funded startups that were going after the same problem in the way that we were. And so it still felt like something special that deserved to be preserved. And I think a lot of developers and users were sort of buying into that vision by sticking around. Even all those years later. And still, we see this huge kind of intangible brand value of having pioneered this architecture. And I think people really gravitate towards this sort of masochistic systems engineering mindset of just, do we have this slide up? No, increasing bandwidth and reducing latency, basically forever. So I think that that wild vision and that kind of relentless focus is something that's really attractive to app developers because it gives them a predictable path to scale and for their products to just get better. And ultimately, it comes down to the same thing as Bezos used to say. It's an obsession with customers. They want fast, cheap, simple, easy to use networks. They've proven that to us through every network that has, that's gained major market share in the last 30 years. So, we're just going to keep pushing at that, right? Even if the market is volatile for the next 20, 30 years, we'll keep pushing at those core metrics.
Yeah, from my perspective, having a bunch of portfolio companies building on Solana through that bear market, I think the number one thing that really caused people to stick it out was just the alignment on the goal. Everyone's like, we're going to get 1 billion people on chain. This is the way to do it, and nothing else really matters. So I found that to be really powerful, and I think that the reason why I'm spending so much time talking about culture is I think culture is bigger than strategy, right? Culture is kind of the foundational thing on which ecosystems like this, great ecosystems, can be built. There's the backwards-looking aspect of culture, the shared trauma and such, but then there's also the forward-looking alignment. Who made that? Someone made a really funny website, solanaroadmap.com.
That was Mert. I think I think Matt just gave credit to Tolly for that, which that happens. But Mert did it. If Mert's around, I'm giving him credit. He made that site.
Yeah, check it out. solanaroadmap.com. Very in-depth, explains everything that we're going to be doing in the future. All right, so now let's shift gears and talk about the future. And talk about L1s more generally. Do you think it's going to be a winner-takes-most market for L1s? Or do you think market share is going to be really distributed among several big winners? Like, what do you think the market structure is going to be if we look forward 5 or 10 years from now?
I can't convince myself otherwise. I think absolutely it'll be winner take most. I think Metcalfe's law is real. The value of a network is the square, is proportionate to the square of the number of participants in it. I think we're already starting to see Solana with a hockey stick of network effects and value. There's no other real single explanation for why every use case is booming on Solana now. Even new ones, new verticals, new narratives, new metas, they just keep gravitating towards Solana, and it keeps outcompeting other networks on these metrics. We are not producing these things. We are learning about them in the same way that everyone in this room is, on Twitter and in the news and things like that. So, the network effects are very real, and I think, the core thesis 6-7 years ago was that every blockchain out there, including Ethereum, was shooting themselves in the foot by breaking the network effects that they had, by sharding liquidity, sharding users, sharding applications, and taking sharding approaches to scaling. So yeah, I mean, I do think it's going to be winner take most, and I think it's going to be Solana. But also, I'm the most biased person in this room.
I don't know if you're the most biased. There might be a little more bias out here. Okay, so Solana has been surpassing Ethereum on most metrics recently. And I talked about earlier the MEV numbers and basically what I consider cash flow for these networks. Solana has well surpassed Ethereum. But a lot of that has been due to meme coins. Solana has had a ton of trading volume on meme coins. And there was a burst earlier this year. People thought it kind of died, and now we're back with a fury, and it's greater than it's ever been before. How do you think about meme coins, the role they have on Solana, and sustainability of this as a capital markets phenomenon?
Yeah, easy questions here, I guess. So I don't really know is the honest answer, but I think there's a few things that I look at. So one is, Bitcoin is a meme coin. It was a meme. There's a meme about a fixed supply schedule and a hard cap, and this idea of sound non-government state-backed money, and it's now a $1.5 trillion meme, or maybe more now. And and Dogecoin is like definitely a meme. There was nothing really innovative about it at all. It's literally just the meme, and that's something like what, $50-60 billion now. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many of those will exist in our lifetime, or why Dogecoin is what it is. But there's obviously some staying power to the tune of billions of or trillions of dollars for things that are just stories. And I think the way that I think about it for Solana is it's far and away the dominant default platform on the internet for issuing these irrational assets that have no backing. They are strictly community based. That's not a different trend than the NFT market revolution and kind of 2021 where we saw that market evolve to. It was just it wasn't about the art. It was about the communities that shared one set of assets and tried to build value around those assets. Where does it go? I have no idea. It's so weird. Like, this is, in a way, it's really delightful for us because we grew up in the early internet, and the early internet felt super weird. It didn't feel like anything there made sense. E-Bombs World and Salad Fingers and all these weird little niche cartoons. But if you look at where all those went, they ended up becoming YouTube and Facebook and these things that really changed the world, and were not taken seriously when they started. 140 characters on Twitter was considered like this lowest common denominator. Like, why should I care about what someone is thinking and blathering their every last little insignificant thought on the internet? But that became new media. Like, it is the public town square. So Solana has tens of thousands of these assets issued every day. There's some power law. Some of them might be useful or valuable someday. But I think the other way to think about it is just look at the app store with Apple. A lot of it is games. A lot of how they monetize, a lot of how Apple generates revenue from apps in the App Store is games. These things have no intrinsic value other than entertainment, but it's something like $30 billion in revenue. And you don't generate revenue for Apple from like Uber, which is a very valuable service. It's hugely transformative. It's probably one of the most significant killer apps of mobile devices. But it's largely peer-to-peer. You just need the thing to work. You want minimal fees. And it's a reason that people buy phones, but they stay sticky and they have these kind of long tail, high ARPU outcomes when they get engaged with something like games. So I think blockchains are similar. There will be some use cases where very few people generate a lot of revenue for the protocol, maybe in ways that we don't all agree with or understand. I don't personally buy loot boxes in games, but that is in a way subsidizing the really valuable services that we use that don't generate revenue for Apple. How's that?
Yeah.
Is that like...
That was great. And actually, I've been thinking about this. I think meme coins have been good for Solana in more than just one way. There's the obvious way that everyone can think about: MEV, cash flow, revenue, users, all of that is really good. But there's a subtle second way I think meme coins are really good for Solana. And it's meme coins segment capital markets between fundamental capital allocation and just like gambling, right? And that segmentation is really useful because if you look at cycles past, let's look at 2017 cycle, for example, or even 2021 cycle, those were combined. And so what that meant is that if you are retail who's really looking to gamble on what's going to be the next 100x or 1000x thing, well, you're buying the newly launched L2, L3 intersubjective relativistic work token, and you're actually muddying capital markets and distorting prices. And then, look, VCs and private investors are all looking for returns. So when you see capital markets go and reward that because of the gambling game, then that actually takes money away from actually productive applications. It takes attention away from those productive applications. And I think the segmentation means that now professional investors who do not have an edge in meme coins have to actually underwrite fundamentals again and underwrite things that build value for users, underwrite like apps that users actually touch, and not underwrite like middleware infrastructure stuff because they're underwriting to returns when the token launches.
I think that's definitely right. I think we're already seeing a class of founders who are happy to see all of the speculative noise sucked away by meme coins and see reasonable valuations and reasonable relationships with their investors and reasonable timelines for building something of real value. And the ones who were not prepared to do that before getting a giant crypto cash out are just not in the space. Like, they're not building products. So you have a much higher concentration of really strong product builders that actually are trying to solve a problem versus ones who are, have glorified meme coins. They're basically meme coins with a white paper wrapper and a lot of excitement from junior analysts at venture capital firms in Brooklyn.
That's pretty brutal. All right, so sticking to this world of L2s and such, how do you think about competition with Base? Base has clearly emerged as the dominant L2 on Ethereum. We joke internally, we're like, the future of Ethereum is Coinbase. They seem to have put a lot of their chips on that side of the table. And they do have pretty incredible distribution. How do you think about the competitive landscape there?
Yeah, I think they're definitely a credible competitor. It's a bit of a knife fight. Every application that works on Solana gets copied on Base immediately. Same thing used to happen on Binance Smart Chain. Before that, there were many other like layer one competitors that you don't really hear about anymore that were just always nipping at our heels. I think so. The distribution thing is really interesting because in theory, the whatever 100 million install base of Coinbase should just be easily translated into this on-chain user base. We have not seen that yet. Coinbase is putting immense amounts of resources and headcount towards making that conversion happen. Same thing happened with Telegram. A lot of resources, a lot of time put towards taking this pre-installed Web2 user base and converting them to do on-chain things. There's a lot of adverse incentives, right? Like the teams who are in charge of off-chain metrics and things that accrue value to a public company's balance sheet are not incentivized to just push that value off into an on-chain ecosystem. And so, I think that's going to be just a kind of core platform risk problem that every developer has to face as they think about building on something like Base versus Solana. And then also just the near-term results, the things that we're seeing today do not corroborate this idea that an app developer gets better distribution on Base than on Solana. I can't tell you how many applications have failed to get their first 10,000 users on Coinbase, migrated to Solana. Actually, I mean, I think Pump was one of them. Migrated to Solana, they get tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of users. It's in a much more organic, constantly evolving distribution system. It is not centrally controlled by me or anyone else. There are distribution channels like Drip that take advantage of compressed NFTs to have subscriptions where every subscriber gets free NFTs every week from creators. And that protocol has now become a distribution mechanism for any new application on Solana to reach everyone on Solana. The fact that you have a competition, a credible competition for the distribution layer within the ecosystem of users that have Solana wallets, I think is a better long-term force for improving market share than having a centralized company that's beholden to its shareholders controlling that distribution. So, but we love good competition. Like it really sucks when we have a year where there's just nobody really that that we feel like we're in a knife fight with. So it's good that right now there's a very real, credible one, and I think Brian Armstrong is just an incredible entrepreneur, and it's great to have a competitor like that in the market.
Yeah, steel sharpens steel, right? And we need that competition to all be better. I think we have the same ultimate objectives.
I think Ethereum would not be moving as fast as it is, or doing, making as many hard decisions as it is without Solana. So I think competition is great for everybody.
Yeah. To keep going on competition, I think one of the really differentiated things on Solana is token extensions, and also just the developer philosophy that led to something like token extensions, where tokens are all one contract, not a contract that's re-implemented by everyone making an ERC20, for example. Can you share a little bit on how did you come up with the idea for token extensions, and are there any use cases of those extensions that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, so I think, token extensions are probably in 5 years' time going to be seen as transformative, a protocol feature as something like NFTs were for Ethereum or ERC20s, I think. And the reason we think that is because most of the reasons that an enterprise like Visa or PayPal would think about launching a permission chain or doing an L2, most of the configurability that they get are applicable through token extensions, and the fact that it exists as a token issuance standard that is universally adopted just takes advantage of that that network-wide composability and standardization of Solana that you don't see in this highly fragmented EVM ecosystem. So how did it come about? We could go back to, there's literally one engineer working on privacy features. PayPal started, knocking on our door saying, we think the throughput of Solana can support this crazy stablecoin idea that we have. Turned out that confidentiality was an important part of what they were looking for. They wanted what eventually became confidential transfers, where you can see which accounts transact, but you don't see the balances or the size of the transactions. And that's really important for merchants. It's a really critical part of their sort of product spec, and it was the minimum kind of satisfying feature for their compliance department, which is obviously like dozens of people. So so the decision was let's roll this into a separate token issuance standard. Anza took it over. The foundation worked on coordinating efforts in the ecosystem around this standard, and then we added everything else that Instagram and Visa and everyone else kind of needed to get around this idea of having this compartmentalized permission network to do blockchain things, which obviously doesn't make sense. So, confidential transfer is super exciting. PayPal's stablecoin uses that. Things like transfer hooks allow for the properties of a permission environment where you could, let's say like Baxis that does investment grade whiskey on chain. They have a marketplace. They're doing RFID tags and measuring how long bottles of whiskey are aging and obviously it's highly regulated. They have to make sure that redemption doesn't happen with a minor without KYC showing that they're of age. So they can use transfer hooks to ensure that those assets only go to the wallets that they approve and that redemption only happens in a compliant way. This is just like a tiny little example of the insane configurability. So I think what we find now is just every major institution is kind of like they're mind blown when they hear about what they can pull off with token extensions. And that's kind of our bread and butter. It's blowing the design space wide open and then just waiting for the right architects to come and build killer use cases out of it.
I mean, never lacked for ambition. I think we can say that. Token extensions, I think, are probably one of the most ambitious infrastructure primitives out there in crypto.
I think you'll see, we're already seeing them get copied, but there's a really important distinction, which is, every good idea gets copied across every other EVM ecosystem, but they all have their own version, and they're all trying to be the standard. There's that like XKCD comic where they're like, oh, there's 15 competing standards. It's so fragmented. This sucks. I know. Let's make another standard. And then there's 16 competing standards. So they're. I mean, look, maybe they'll figure it out. I hope they do. That'd be better for competition. But it's just they're not showing the signs of coordinating across all of those competing ecosystems to produce a standard that you can rely on, where if assets get bridged between L2s or between ETH L1 and another EVM L1, that you can rely on these same assurances, and that Visa will be able to pass OFAC checks and stay in the loop to restrict transactions that don't pass OFAC checks. These are like really important things to make sure you never have a leak. And within Solana, as long as you are on the Solana network, you can be assured that that those token extensions will do their job. So even if the functionality is simple and can be copied, the way that it gets copied creates fragmentation, and it creates an inability to have an audit trail and reliability across these ecosystems. It's just like one of the ways that one network that is as high throughput, low latency as possible, it just creates these compounding network effects. And I still think we're in the early days of it, but it's starting to feel like the network effects are really taking hold.
The network effects are really powerful, and now thinking about the ambition that Solana has. You've gone up against probably one of the most entrenched network effects in the world, which is mobile. What is it like competing with Apple and Google? How has that been over the last few years? I know Mobile 2 is coming out soon.
Seeker, yeah. The first one was called Saga. The second one is called Seeker. Okay, so Solana Labs is separate from Solana Foundation, right? You could think of it as a product studio. It built the first validator client that ultimately is the software that most of the validators in the network run. It built a lot of DeFi primitives as open source reference implementations that developers took and ran with, and that created the earliest wave of DeFi startups. It created Metaplex and the auction house contract that created the NFT marketplace wars. And what we started to realize is, as Solana's network effects picked up, we couldn't get ahead of the next thing. We were unable to figure out what product we could launch where we would seed some new vertical. DeepIn happened. It just happened. Like, people just started building these incredible hardware networks, and they looked for what was performant, and Solana was the only thing that worked, and so there was organic product market fit across all these other verticals. And so we asked ourselves, what's the hardest thing? What's the hardest problem that's the most insurmountable to solve? And we wanted to try and fail because all these other things succeeded. Like that, if you're in school and you make A+ every time, you're not challenging yourself enough. You got to get a C, or you need to increase your course load, or shoot higher.
The way we joke about that is if you're a VC and you don't have any zeros in your portfolio, like, what are you doing? Are you even taking enough risk?
Well, I mean, the thing for me is, like, Elon had Falcon 9 blow up on the launch pad, just like, it's super embarrassing. You need to have embarrassing failures, or you're not swinging hard enough. So we were like, well, launching a phone, that'll definitely fail. That's got to fail. But it didn't come from just wanting to have our logo on a phone. It was app developers who they would see these fragments of product market fit. So STEPN, in 2021, famously, everyone in crypto was using STEPN, a simple, dumb, walk to earn game. But it had to be mobile, or you don't have sensors to track your steps. And it went super viral. It had like 2 million users in 4 months. If you talk to Tolly, who was on the core kernel team for Brew, he remembers when the first app on flip phones got 2 million downloads. It was a bowling app where you like slide your finger on keys to shoot a bowling ball. And then within a year, the App Store was a thing, and and it really accelerated from there. So the fact that there weren't 100 step-ins was concerning to us. Why are there fragments of product market fit but not an explosion of use cases? Is because all the apps that had anything to do with crypto were getting completely sandbagged in the App Store. So immediately we knew this is the hardest problem that would be insurmountable to solve. Let's go try and do it. And like, mobile phones are notoriously hard as a category to get into, but one thing we knew is that something would create an asset that you couldn't access without getting the phone, and that would drive demand for the phone. If we could get that loop to happen, we might stand a chance. We didn't know it was going to be meme coins, but anybody who's paying attention knows that the entire supply of 20,000 of the first phone all sold out in like 2 days, because Bonk launched and airdropped to the phones, and then now it's worth like $5,000, and it was a $500 phone. Seeker, a similar thing. We've sold 150,000 of them, which is that these are real. That's a real consumer electronics business. You could IPO that. A lot of it is meme coins, but you're starting to see the more substantive, roadmap-driven consumer applications that just couldn't exist. They couldn't launch in the App Store, and at least they have a way to consistently iterate in this really high ARPU environment of early adopter crypto nerds that we have pretty locked down, and they can expand from there. So Seeker is coming out soon. For these 150,000 pre-orders. You all can pre-order as well. You can go buy one and use it. And we just have to take it like 100,000 or 1 million at a time. Like, it's just a few 10x's before you're credibly competing with the big guys. And in the meantime, every Android OEM has talked to the Solana mobile team. There are thresholds they have for when they take these features seriously. We are smashing through all of them, but they're very slow. So it's sort of a pincer movement. You compete credibly, but you also give them the tools, to integrate.
I was hoping you were going to drop some news on the shipping of Seeker. That would have been awesome.
I think well, no, maybe I shouldn't do that.
All right, so looking forward, without any specific dates or anything, what do you think the next meta is on Solana? Right, we've had quite a few, right? We had DeFi in 2020, in 2021 we had NFTs, now, 2024 there's meme coins. What's the next meta?
Okay, so there is currently a meta happening that is like AI meme coins. And I think it's as ridiculous as it sounds. It's AI agents that are launching coins, and they are the leader and the influencer for these tokens on Twitter. Famously, Mark Andreessen gave $50,000 in Bitcoin to one called Truth Terminal, and it gave him a business plan, and he was like, yes, here's 50 grand, and the first thing it did was launch a Solana meme coin. And so there are multiple billion-dollar AI meme coins right now. I don't know where that goes, but I think that a core tenet of crypto is it's peer-to-peer. You want to have end users that actually have custody and agency over their assets. But another core tenet of blockchain is it's just very hard to use. And the more you use it, the more difficult. You're signing all these transactions. It's actually, it's quite a lot of operations. So I do think that, if any products find the operations that a user can trust an AI agent to take on their behalf on chain, then you kind of get the best of both worlds. You can have someone who has full control of their assets. They can access them, transfer them, move them anytime, but they also have an agent operating on their behalf that can rebalance portfolios or move things into vaults or invest and construct a portfolio on their behalf. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it would be really cool and it would make sense to me. So I'd love to see that. And then, I think deepen products and networks are just insanely exciting. Like HiveMapper has remapped, what is it, 20% of the world's roads in like less than 2 years through a product like this. And it's credibly competitive with Google Maps and Apple Maps, and they're finding real enterprise customers for their map data, and it's a better product because it refreshes more quickly with dash cams from drivers on the road. So when these real products meet real demand from institutional and retail investors, I think you're going to see a flywheel of really incredible hardware products that get financed through tokens. I also hopefully want to see just in the next year any and all other forms of on-chain equities. I think it's time that the infrastructure is all there. Solana has plenty of compliant ways to launch securities on-chain, and the regulatory environment in the U.S. is clearing up quickly. So that'll be really exciting. The timing, I don't know which of these is like a 10-year thing or a 1-year thing, but they're all going to happen, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, bringing some of those securities on chain, that decentralized NASDAQ, that was the first pitch deck, right? So.
It was blockchain at NASDAQ speed, which is much bigger as a vision, I think, than just NASDAQ, right? Because blockchain can be a much larger, global marketplace of marketplaces than just NASDAQ, but it should be at the speed that NASDAQ operates at, which is close to light speed. A lot of people get that wrong.
One last question for you. Can you describe for the audience the comprehensive Solana roadmap for the future? And you have 4 words or fewer.
Increase bandwidth, reduce latency. That's it. Memorize it. Get it tattooed. Make it your children's middle name. Like in 20 years, it'll have lasting power. And that's it. Like there is no other roadmap.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Raj. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.